Okay. Well, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to Pasadena Photography Arts Open Show number 47. 47. Can you believe that? 47. Is that, do I hear myself speaking over there in the background? It's not the heat that's giving me some delirium right now, right? Whoa. That's it. Okay. My name is Rollins, and person who just took off here, he's coming back. His name is Dax. He is my co-host. He's going to be handling the virtual experience of this show. And as a technical production assistant, we have Alexi in the back. Wave hi, say hi to Alexi. Hey. We are broadcasting live this event through this device, this owl. Hello. You know what, Dax, can you pan? You guys can't see this, but they're gonna see this at home. This camera towards the audience, and I ask you guys for a very, very small favor. I would like you guys to say hello and wave to this camera. So on the count of three, hello, and a big wave to this camera. 1, 2, 3. Hello. That was fun.
Hello.
That was for. Hey, that's great. Hello back. Amazing. So I wanted all of us to be connected, whether we are attending this event virtually or here in person. Okay. Alexi, you can go ahead and start sharing the slideshow to our viewers on the virtual space. And for those of you who are viewing this remotely, please use the chat feature to tell us where you're viewing this event from, whether you're viewing it from another city in Southern California or another state outside of California, or even another country. Please use the chat and say hello and tell us where you're seeing this event from. We are here in the city of Pasadena. We are standing on unceded territory. I acknowledge the Tongva, who are the people of this territory and continue to be the current and future stewards of this land. You know, I've been looking forward to this event for quite some time. This is our return to in-person programming. I've been waiting 4 years. Okay, it's been 4 long years since the before times. I have a quick question for you all in here. Some of you look new to me. How many of you have logged in or seen our shows online in the past? Well, it's great. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for coming back. And for those of you attending virtually, thank you for being here. And for those of you who are new to our community, welcome. We are Pasadena Photography Arts. We are a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization whose mission is to spotlight emerging and established lens-based artists. Okay. Alexi, next slide, please. So, the program that you are here to see today is OpenShow. OpenShow is actually a global platform occurring in cities and countries throughout the world, consisting of events similar to this one, where other OpenShow chapters showcase art projects to a live audience like yourself, allowing the public to engage with the creators, offering a very unique experience in viewing art. Our most recent open call to artists was entitled Disconnected, where we asked artists to submit bodies of work that dealt with human connection or the lack thereof in our post-pandemic world. If you or someone you know here in this audience or in the virtual room there, is interested in sharing your work in this sort of fashion, please go to our website, Pasadena Photography Arts. .org and sign up with our mailings. For those of you who are here today, don't forget to pick up a free postcard. Let me go grab one. Oh, you got some right there? So on your way out, there's some over there, some of the table. We got our website in the back, our URL, and you can take home a little piece of art. Okay. Please do that. Okay, next slide. We want to thank Susan Gans for her generous donation. While we strive to keep this programming free and accessible to the public, we do incur costs. So we are dependent upon public donation to sustain our organization, right? So if you would like to continue to see programming like this and our support of the arts, please go to our website, PasadenaPhotographyArts.org, and locate the donate button and make a contribution. And I thank you in advance. Next slide, please. Pasadena Photography Arts is part of a very expansive photography community. Our communities are very, very intertwined. I am an instructor at LACP, and I've also volunteered my time at The Bridge, which is a program spotlighting upcoming young photographers that was created by ASMP, which is the American Society of Media Photographers. So if you engage in any of these organizations, you will soon find out that we're very, very interconnected in this very rich tapestry. Next slide, please. Aside from our open show programming, we have a program called Forum. This is where we invite special guests, including museum curators, art educators, and long-established photographers to our program. Our next one, we'll be presenting our second annual PPA Photo Award winner to Joyce Ernst for her project Uncertainty Being. It is our second year in providing this award, and we selected her, or the guest curator selected her for the award. What was the cash prize? At $2,000? $2,000.
$2,000 cash prize. Log on Lenscraft came out earlier this week. She has an interview on her website, and she has a live.
Yes.
So it's a really, really lovely.
Yeah. So for any of you aspiring lens-based artists, please again join our mailing list to get notifications, our open calls, and events. Okay. All right. And now what you all been waiting for, let's get this party started, shall we? For those of you new to Open Show, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to introduce each artist, and then the artists will come up and briefly speak about themselves and on the work that you are about to see. After that, we're going to run their slideshow in its entirety without any interruption, and it'll be played on the loop. So after the first run, the artist may choose to revisit an image or so and talk on it, or it may just go straight into a Q&A session with you, the audience. Okay. So with that, and Alexa, you can go ahead and cue the first one. Our first presenter has spent time in over 60 countries. I can't even name 60 countries. Still hoping to spend time in all the rest. She has lived in some of them, along with other states in the US, but still far, far, far prefers her home state of California above anywhere else. I agree with you. She is a California girl through and through. Please welcome Patty Fortlage presenting Lemonade.
Hi. Larger than life. My name is Patricia Fortlage. I also go by Patty. I am a documentary photographer by trade. I spent almost 2 decades working in developing countries with teams that were focused on combating disease and poverty. There are studies that show that if you invest in women, entire communities will be raised. So these programs were doing just that. And that fits with who I am as a photographer. I primarily focus on women's empowerment and try to partner with programs that are doing the same. So I did that for as long as possible. I have a neuromuscular disease called myasthenia gravis that is progressing, which is why I'm holding this paper, because my hands have tremors, and usually people think I'm very nervous and I feel the audience wanting to come to my rescue. So I'm just gonna hold this paper instead. So with the disease progressing a bit and then COVID hitting, the travel pretty much stopped for me, and I started focusing work here in the United States. I worked with programs that focused on the often lifelong after effects of sexual assault on women. sex trafficking work. I worked on a wonderful campaign where I photographed young women in their 20s that were breaking stereotypes of some kind so that the teens and tweens coming behind them didn't need to. So a number of more stateside projects, again, focused on raising women up in the process. My current series that I'm working on is along that line as well. This is my story about my chronic illness journey. Currently today, there are 24.8% of the adult female population have an autoimmune disease in this country. And so while this is my story, it really is a story about women in general. And it's really focused on not only what I am going through with my disease, the good, the bad, you'll see some of my wacky humor in there as well. But also, and maybe most especially, the way that I am and have been treated by the medical community and also our communities at large. So I decided to do this story, to share my story in hopes of helping other women similar to me to not feel alone, because we are very much isolated. The medical community, there's not a lot of awareness for these diseases, these autoimmune diseases. They're not rare, mind you, but there's not a lot of knowledge about them. And so a lot of us have been simply dismissed or told it's all in our head, or I've been told to get a hobby. I've been told I'm just lonely or I'm seeking drugs. In the greater community, I have been spat on for parking in a disabled parking space. I've had people park within inches of my door, sharing my disabled parking space, simply to make me captive so that they could yell at me to get a job, or you lazy freeloader. I'm not sure what benefit they think that I'm freely getting. But anyway, it's been a real eye-opener for me. It's been a real challenge for me. And so my hope with this series is to, like I said, help other women to know they're not alone. I'm also hoping to share some of the ways that I have found to work with the medical community that's more of a partnership, and that's helping me to get what I need, and also to help educate others in understanding what your loved ones may be going through. So that's what this series is about. And I think a lot of the images will sort of speak for themselves, but some not. So I'll talk about a few after we run it, but also would love any and all questions, whether it's about that or me or the disease or whatever you want to throw at me.
It's gonna want to open up to Q&A.
There are a couple,
Sure.
actually.
So let's-
If we could-
Yeah, guys.
that-
let's-
Could we go back to the very first one? Not the cover slide, but yeah, that one there. So this is sort of the cornerstone of the, so weird when you're the art, I have to tell you, especially when it's this big. So this is the cornerstone for this series. And mainly I just wanted to show that there's still beauty here. You know, that not all is lost, not all is gone. So, so that's kind of how that one came about. If we could go to the third one.
Sure.
I'm sorry, the third one. Yeah, so this is called On the Menu. And I wanted to show that these diseases can happen to anybody. Rich, poor, young, old, either gender, but men, you need to do your own project. So I have the old Dutch master, so I just thought, I don't live like this necessarily. But I just wanted to show, this is my Tuesdays, by the way, I get infusions, and so, you know, I just wanted to kind of bring it all together and really say that, and this hit me out of the blue. Before this, I snowboarded competitively, I cycled 6 miles every morning just to get up. I bicycled from San Francisco to LA. I jumped out of airplanes. I jumped off of bridges. I ran down the face of skyscrapers. I'm an athlete. I'm an adrenaline junkie. Boom, this hit, everything changed. It can happen to anyone. So I just wanted to sort of bring that home in this image. If we could go to number 7. Oh, wait, sorry, that one. I guess I have them out of order. This one is titled Slipping Mask. I spend the bulk of my time in public faking it. So when people say, oh, you're just faking it for attention, or, oh, you're faking it for this or that. Yes, I am. I am faking it every day. I mask if I'm out in public, because I have noticed that as soon as people know that I have some lifelong, life-threatening condition, that all of a sudden I have nothing else to offer. My past is gone. My intelligence is gone. People get tired of it. And it's true, I'm not as fun anymore. I can't jump out of airplanes anymore. So for me, I try to appear as healthy as possible. I talk about it freely, but I don't want to look like it if I can help that at all, because it changes the whole dynamic. And then I have to prove my credibility or prove my intelligence or prove I have something to offer before I can even get started. So this is really common for people with chronic disease. We pretend a lot. So that was this one. If we could go to the steampunk. This one was so fun. So I just always like to point this one out because it was so fun. So I had this situation where one day one of my doctors he showed me a picture of a ladder. And I knew what it was and I knew how to use it, but I could not think of the word ladder to save my life. And this happens sometimes. I have no idea why. It's happened when I had lunch with my sister and I couldn't think of her name. So I thought, I'm going to do this image where I'm just going to remove the top of my head and things are just going to come floating in. So this is called object recall. And I don't want to take up too much more time.
No.
Is it okay to?
Yeah,
Okay.
open it up to you.
I want to know, when did you start making the work?
Oh,
How long did it- how did each, you know, the length of time that you do the first image and then, you know, how long did it take you to put all the photographs together and give an idea of process?
yeah. I started this a little over a year ago. So I started photographing a little over a year ago. And that first image that you'll also see over here, that's called The Breath. That has been getting a lot of attention, so it's been showing in a number of different galleries, and people started reaching out to me and saying, oh my gosh, that I get it. And so that kind of started it all. And I thought, okay, let me try a few more. And yeah, it just seemed to resonate with people. And so for this whole past year, I have shot 60 scenarios now. If you go on my website, that's the most comprehensive. And I do a fair amount of writing with each image. It's really kind of a visual narrative, so you can to really understand the realities of what I'm
So
facing.
did this just hit you? Is your whole immune, compromise? Did this just hit you like a couple years ago, or just this last year?
No, actually, it first hit me 18 years ago.
Okay, that's what I wanted. That's a really important thing for people to understand, that it doesn't necessarily, your project doesn't come immediately. It comes after a significant amount.
It comes after people bug you and bug you and bug you for years, and you finally go, oh, I don't like being in front of the camera. There's a reason I do documentary work. But and it didn't start really progressing until right before COVID. And then of course COVID hit and, all of that. But dealing with the medical community, and like I said, the, community at large, things just became more and more and more redundant. Really. It's really, and I thought, what do I do for a living? I document stories, and I try to focus on inequities for women or injustices towards women. And so I finally caved and said, I need to tell this story. And I decided to tell it just my story, because that's easier for me. I guess. I mean, I'm sort of the selfie queen at this point.
I want to take a question from here, then we'll get to the chat. Is there anybody else in here that have comments or any kind of questions? We'll go here.
Yeah, this is a beautiful project. I'm so glad I'm seeing you and hearing you talk about it, because your experience of being judged, harassed, the courage it must have taken to decide I'm going to do this for myself. In front of
Thank
the camera.
you. Yeah, no, those things actually pretty much, it didn't take any courage at that point. I think the frustration just took over, and I thought, this happens so frequently, and it happens to all of us. Again, 25% of the adult female population are in the same boat, right? It's just unacceptable, the way that we're treated. So
The other comment I have is that it's so interesting that it's a documentation, but it's combined with fine art.
thank you for bringing that up. I should have mentioned, yeah, when I started this project, it was really about how do I get the message across? So if that meant that, sure, it was just going to be, a documentary setting, great. If that meant that I was going to be learning food photography to show the image with soup, then that was going to be that. Or conceptual photography, where there's one image where I'm lying on the ground looking at the camera, and then there's also me above. Like, am I me? Am I still in there? So it's conceptual, it's documentary, it's food, it's still life, it's whatever it takes. I am not limiting myself by genre of photography. It's art, and it's whatever needs to be done to get the message across. So thank you for bringing that up.
Let's get one more in here and one in the chat. Melanie, go ahead.
I agree, it's very beautiful and vulnerable, which I really appreciate very much. And I wonder if you work It's the bathtub photograph. I wanted to understand technically, how do you involve somebody else with the making of the image?
Can we go to that image? I think it was
That,
the
the
last
last
one.
one.
So no, I did this one all by myself. And my tethering was not working for me, so I rigged my camera up above, and that is water. That is a full tub of water. So yes, I rigged the camera above. Of course, I had a remote trigger, and a ladder. So I would hop out with wet clothes, climb up the ladder, look on the back of the camera, and adjust from there. I could not get my tethering to work for whatever reason. And that has been the case in all of the scenarios I have shot, with the exception of the lake, where I have the funeral wreath around me and I'm floating in the lake. I diagrammed that all out. I set it all up, and then I had a friend who was also a photographer actually click the button. There was no way I was getting out of that lake multiple times at 6 a.m. in the morning for that one, especially when a couple days before I had scouted that area and there were critters galore. So I was not there. But all of the other ones, I have done everything myself.
Let's do a final question from the chat. Go ahead.
Manny would like for you to tell us about the soup image.
The soup image. Can you go back to the soup?
Yeah, so that's basically, like I said, I have tremors in my hands. And so there are some things I just don't do in public anymore. Eating soup is one of them. That's pretty straightforward with what eating soup looks like for me. I just never know if I'm gonna be able to get the spoon to my mouth without soup going anywhere. So, yeah, so that was my foray into food.
Well, thank you, Patty, so much. It's good. Our next originally scheduled presenter unfortunately could not make it today due to an unforeseen medical issue. However, I would like to honor her and her work by telling you about her and showing her slideshow. So I'm going to read to you her artist statement. Claudia Sofía Sepúlveda Solís, the 22-year-old native of Monterrey, Mexico, who has always been captivated by the intersection of cultures and the profound influence of languages in our perceptions. She is fluent in Spanish, English, Italian, French, and Portuguese. In 2021, she moved to Los Angeles to pursue her passion for film production at CSUN, Cal State University Northridge. Claudia's academic journey has been marked by notable achievements, including being awarded the CSUN Art Department Ray and Nadia Freed Memorial Scholarship in Photography in both 2022 and 2024, and the Mark Yaws Memorial Scholarship in 2024 for the Cinema Television Arts Department. She has earned merit scholarships for programs including New York University and the Australian Film, Television, and Radio School. Outside of academia, Claudia is a decorated figure skater, holding 2 national titles. Claudia, what else can you do? Jeez. And indulges her love for outdoors through rock climbing and alpine skiing. Additionally, she volunteers at the California Wildlife Association, furthering her commitment to environmental conservation. She previously had a digital art exhibition at Marco Museo de Arte Contemporáneo in Monterrey, Mexico, where she showcased awareness of the horrors of animal cruelty. Inspired by unknown cities and emotional quality of settling within familiar and unfamiliar places, Claudia hopes to forever make films that make the mundane feel grand and intimate while supporting nature conservation. She is particularly passionate about pursuing a career with National Geographic, focusing on shooting underwater and wild. Without any further ado, please take a look at Claudia's work. Reconnecting through Earth's hues. have been informed that Claudia is actually in the chat. So if you want to unmic her microphone, maybe Claudia, if you can hear us, if you want to say a few words, go, I give you the mic.
We'll see if she says something.
Yeah. While we wait for that, while we might ask questions, if she's available, I do want to encourage you to have if you have any comments. If you can go to the very first slide, I'll start with the comments. When I first saw this image, I thought, wow, just where am I? You know, and I think the colors, the silhouette, the image brought me to a different place. And I think we can look for that. Art can do that for us. It transports us to a different time and place. And this image does that for me with the colors and our subject matter here. We don't know who this person is, but it's not so important as what they're representing and sort of like whatever you're interpreting this image to be for you. Are there any other comments from the audience that they want to share about Claudia's work? Is she there? It's her mom. Okay. How's her mom? The last one, Lexi. All right. Put up again for Claudia. All right. Our next artist, and I have to give him a lot of credit for being able to participate in such last minute notice. Our next artist is a lover of fish and aquariums, so much that he has his own 40-gallon planted aquarium. Please welcome the future competitor to SeaWorld, Brandon Saglam.
Hi, I'm Brandon Saglam, and I am a recent graduate with my BFA from NYU Tisch School of the Arts. I was a double major in psych and photography and imagery.
Project.
I'll be presenting my project Canım today. I'm a photographer and artist who works mostly in portrait photography. I'm interested in building visual narratives and creating something out of the intangible. A lot of my focus is informed by my research in psychology and an interest in artwork, especially historical artwork from the Middle East and contemporary art from there. I inform a lot of my work from psychology, examining like interpersonal and intrapersonal, the internal, and finding how to kind of evoke those feelings. I recently have been showing work in the small circuits, studio circuits in New York. I have shown at the MA in Santa Cruz and the Blanc in New York and the Commons in New York. I can start breaking into the project now. I had been working on work that was inspired by essentially my father had recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's about like 3 years ago, and that was something that was sitting on me, especially growing up. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I kind of got to slowly watch her deteriorate over time. And so something that was present in my mind was trying to channel the work into addressing this. This is something I was thinking about. I had been away from my family. I'm originally from California, and I was in New York, and trying to evaluate like familial connections. For most of my life, my family had lived in another country or in another state, and now I'm also having moved away in another state, in another country for certain family members. And so a big idea was trying to like connect with memory and the idea of what we hold on to and what we let go as things deteriorate, especially. And a big thing was I'm looking at work that's essentially, you're thinking about memory and looking back and the idea of connecting these two. I had, and what are landmarks to these areas and stuff like that. A big aspect of it, the project title is Canım. And it's a term of endearment. Loose translation would be darling. It's a familial connection there. And I was, an aspect of it was connecting with my father, and that's having also have moved away from this family to the United States, and now I would have moved away into New York. I was trying to kind of interconnect with that. This was coming from doing work in which I was burning prints that I had worked on, in which I was trying to navigate through what it would be like to deteriorate and applying that like in a physical sense to images. My next sense, I'm coming off, looking at a lot of old Islamic artwork and a lot of work from the Middle East, and something that gets passed down in a familial sense. It was weaving, carpet weaving, stuff like that. In a way, this is in progress work. I'm very interested in expanding it into the idea of like 17 by 22 prints, looking at it, almost making it as if it's a rug. And that's a big thing with like trying to show these like monumentalism and these memories and integrating that and working it. A big influence on like the work then as I was approaching it and working with prints and stuff. For that previous project where I was burning prints, another portion of it, I was going through archival work in which my father had scanned old family collections of images. And also there was these images my father was taking of me and family when we would go to Turkey over the summers when I was very little before my grandparents had passed. And essentially what I've done here was I had been printing those like 5x7, 4x6. And then I was printing a lot of snapshot imagery from my summers I was spending it in California. My approach to that initially was I really wanted to weave images, thin cuts and stuff like that. But as I was approaching it, I realized that there was a lot of kind of imagery I wanted to integrate into the work, focusing on motifs and similar thing. And something that's really important and informs my practice is I think about there was a writer and former MoMA curator back in the 60s, 70s, John Sarkowski. He wrote about art being very much windows and mirrors. The artist is either observing the world around them or it's a reflection of themselves. Something that I really integrate into my work. One is I think this interaction of looking through a mirror or looking through a window. When you look through a window, there's still a reflection. There's an interaction there. It's mutually constitutive. And a big aspect of that for me was in my work, I like to include a lot of subframing, a lot of putting images within another image in order to draw to points. A large importance to me in this work was subframing familial aspects or breaking up images and iconography and faces. For the most part, most of the people who have now passed in these images, their faces are broken up in some way. And it's connecting with this idea of interacting with memory and the idea of losing and separating and what we hold on to and what we don't. And treasuring what's important and kind of capturing that feeling. The reason I wanted to include snapshot images is I'm at an art school, I'm working, and we're encouraged to do certain aspects in fine arts and traditionalism, and you're looking at these practices, and I'm working in a studio and I'm getting the photo strobes out and I'm taking portraits and it's fun, but I realize that I'm coming back every summer. I have all this collection of 35mm film that has just snapshot images. I'm having fun, I'm enjoying myself, and I feel much more closely connected to these. I had been working on a project previously for my thesis work in which I was taking portrait images in the studio and trying to connect with Turkish literature. But the issue with that was like it was very devoid of my actual personality. It was very clinical. And I wanted to connect the idea of memory is what I'm trying to like find, because in a way, a lot of these are connected to myself and overlap. They were given a nickname by me that I was referring to them sometimes as memory stacks. And a lot of this is being integrated into the work, and this is the focus at the time.
could open up Q&A from the audience and from people viewing the show virtually. Yes, go ahead.
We can go back to that.
The first image?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to ask, what was your inspiration behind placing that then vote there on the cars room? That felt very. So what was the reason?
I was talking about with the self-framing or just placing things into doorways, and I think as I was looking through these images, kind of what was going through initially, like I was saying, I wanted to weave images, but I started noticing there was a lot of like avenues in order to explore this idea of looking through something in order to connect with looking back and stuff like that. So I started finding like doorways, window frames, mirrors as a way to connect with that idea to look. And a big aspect of this was like, I have this 35mm photo that I have, and it's like, okay, there's a rear view mirror taking up the entire image, and there's nothing important in it necessarily. And so I'm taking, and I decided it was like, in a big aspect of this, outside of my father being the child right there, and then that whose face is apparent, and my great auntie Mary to the far right side. I have not necessarily met anyone in this image, or that especially as their face. And this idea of just my interaction and my knowledge of you is entirely through this gaze. And so that was a big aspect of like placing and centering that as a focus. And it's this idea of looking back. I'm looking at an archival image that's in black and white, and looking back into the history, same way you look into a rear view mirror. And that's kind of the thought process I approach as I like cut these and tape these in the back together.
Yes.
And when you're doing your, are you doing that physically, or are you doing that digitally? I'm just curious how you're accomplishing that.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, these are all hand-done works. One, not only like that was it really important to me, I very much enjoy the aesthetic quality of when you scan just items, ephemera, the images of just that physical sense. I think it brings so much more interesting depth with that. But a big aspect of it was I really wanted to engage with that, like the idea of like practicing art forms that would be from my background, my like and such. And no one's going to be able to teach me carpet weaving. I'm not going to take a lot of time out to work on weaving like a lot of like rugs and such. And that's typically an art practice that would be passed down, or ceramics and stuff. And so I was like, how can I engage with that? And so I really wanted to do the physical process. And if I expand these, I really want to make the importance of it being physical and the idea of engaging with memory physically. And so that was a big aspect of it. And this is a quirky thing. And it was also a thing I took in my last project. I was shooting a lot of film, and I left a lot of the dust. The idea of kind of to conflict with the traditional principles of like working within the art sphere is not for making perfection and not making it clean. I like having something like gritty in a way. And so the idea you can see the paper perforations as I cut, because I was working with matte paper instead of a luster, was really important to me. And then there's also a principle in Islamic art, especially with like the tile makers and stuff. They like to specifically, there's always one mistake in the work. And the idea being that only like God is perfect. And I'm not religious, but it was something I kind of want to incorporate into the work, of the idea of like not striving for perfection and this and a classical traditionalism, but the idea of moving a lot of these images, the ideas all progressing forward. Not only looking back, but like kind of existing in the present. So you can even see like the paper or in scratch marks. And to me, that aesthetically was a quality that was really important to me. The idea of families and connections, a lot of that isn't perfect. But humans are not perfect. And it was really important to me that that came through in the work.
A question over here, yes.
I'm not the question. First, Instagram handle is. And my comment is that I would just really like my grandparents. And I just see that like very distinctly of like this weaving
overlapping of memory and like memory getting jumbled and stuff. So I can definitely see like the tangibility, like part of that. I think also the cemetery image, I think is my favorite, and like I could totally see that. But that is inside.
Thank you so much. Yeah, to actually comment about that, like, that was also an aspect of thinking of landmarks. The cemetery was important because that was the first time like visiting with my uncle at class. But what I'm backdropping it, and this is a motif in a lot of the images, especially associated with death and macabre, is I'm adding like applying images with sunsets, the idea of something setting. But I in my head, a lot of like influenced me in that aspect too was the influence of one idea of sunset, suns, California, and that was my way of integrating California into Turkey and these images in Turkey, but also this idea of like I like the Hemingway book, the sun also rises. This interaction of while the sun sets, it also rises. The idea of something ending, but also something also beginning, and that's working in the art. That's what the overlap is of influencing the present from the past.
Anyone else? What are
I'm not sure. He's funny sometimes because I think he loves it. He finds it so interesting, especially as I was approaching a lot of work with family, and it kind of makes him pause. It unfortunately makes him a little sad because he wishes my grandfather could have seen it. He was a military judge, but he apparently would write poems in his time and stuff like that. He's very into the arts, and I know a lot of family were very like they were big readers and stuff and such. And so there's an aspect of sadness that comes with him. I know they like the work. I know they like seeing it. It's a big aspect of seeing the family again. It's so funny because some of these images are taken by him. So the way I describe it, and it was so funny showing that I had a different variation of this work in a class where I had my grandparents in the windows, and that's something I switch out with this sometimes. And it was so funny because when my professor saw just this image without anything, she's like, "Oh, I love this photo," and I was like, "I'll tell my dad." And in a way, every time when I'm presenting work, it's kind of getting to present work with him in a sense. It's like this is in a way my exhibition, but it's with him. And when I go into like say portfolio reviews and such, something that always gets a kicker out of like especially these, like the professors, the artists that like to look over work, they're like, oh, there's such an interesting interaction between a photographer now and this like amateur photography back then and these ideas. I'm like, yeah, but it is fun. It's something where I can share, and it's something for the first time with a lot of my artwork where I feel like I'm actually engaging with like the way people would engage with their families and their projects is something that I've been looking for, and I wasn't sure how to do, especially when it's just here in California. It's just me and my parents family wise. So now like trying to engage with that, defining the family who has been separated or live in other states, other countries, has passed away. To me, that was such a nice thing, and it was a way in my head we're doing it together.
a question here?
Yes, from idea to completion, how long does it take you to create one of your pieces?
I'd say because I did it in a lot of batches. I spent like 2-3 hours going back through these scans, putting them on like 8.5 by 11, like so I can fit maybe 2-3 images on that, printing it, and I did that all in one day. And then what I started, and then the nice thing is when you're working in like a print finishing room or something like this over here, you can quickly cut all the images of just like getting your like 4x6. And so all of that was easy, probably took 2-3 hours. When I started approaching these is I would take maybe 30 to 40 minutes as I cut strips, I cut lines, I decide where I want to put it. I would always I would come into our like digital lab, and I was working at most of this at school, and I was throwing it out on like healing mat and just organizing the photos. Here are my archival images, here are my father's photos, and here are my photos. And then I start laying next to each other, start looking at them, and then once I find a set, 40 minutes, maybe less, maybe 20, depending on how intricate it is. And I try to decide what I want the underlying image, the historical image, technically, to come through, and or vice versa, what sits on the back, what sits on the front. And then I cut and then take another probably like 10 minutes to scan and just prep a scan. So that's, to be fair, in a way, the work is primarily digitally at the moment. But yeah.
Brandon, thank you so much. Before you all leave today, please take a look at all of the work that the artist brought here, including Brandon's work. You can see the actual prints that he made there in person. Did I break that? Found it. All right. Okay, moving on to our next presenter. Our next presenter has a cat named Fiasco and enjoys watching cooking shows and pro wrestling with the cat, I'm presuming. Cat's choice on channels, right?
You gotta do.
Debuting his work, Disconnected from the World, please welcome Eric Smith.
Wow. So, I always want to pull out a piece of paper before I gave a presentation. There's really nothing on this paper, but the idea of doing it sets really well with me. So, when I saw the Instagram post for Disconnecting, I was like, oh, wow, a show. Should I do it? Should I not do it? I live in my head more often than I should. And of course, I was like, I'm not going to do it. Week went by. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Then I said, not going to do it. So 2 days before the deadline, I said, forget this. I'm just going to do it. Went through my catalog, found some images, and then I wrote this for my project submission. And this is the only thing I wrote down because I didn't remember what I wrote at the time. My project demonstrates how individuals often find themselves disconnected from the world, largely due to being preoccupied with their own thoughts or using headphones to intentionally block out all the noise and distraction that surround them in their environment. That's what I wrote. At the time when I submitted the work, I said, yeah, that's what I need. That's what this work was. Then an email came through. You've been accepted to present your project. And I said, oh crap. They picked me. Of course, at that point, imposter syndrome went through. Man, probably only 2 people submitted. I'm just here. Whatever, I don't need to do this. What am I doing? What can I do? So my mind was going crazy. My anxiety was kicking in. At that point, I said, you know what? I signed up for this. I have to present. Let me actually go look at the work that I submitted and have an idea. So I went back and I looked at the 20 images that I submitted. And after a while, I realized that my statement that I submitted was truthful. However, it wasn't 100% true because I was talking about the outside world, the individuals and things of that nature. But in actuality, these pictures reflect me. The thing that people need to understand is something about me, and it's a question I get when I'm at work, and a lot of my colleagues from work are here. They always ask the question, why do you have a camera? I'm like, well, I'm just taking pictures. I'm just taking pictures. That's my answer. But the true answer, probably an answer that I've never shared with anybody until this moment is, this camera is my therapist. This is how I communicate, how I feel, what I need to say. And my wife can attest to this. I don't talk much about my feelings. However, I do communicate how I feel through this camera. So when I'm out in the world, walking around and taking pictures, it's usually me reflecting what I'm feeling. If I'm feeling lost, if I'm feeling lonely, if I'm feeling disheveled, in ways that I get out of my own head because my anxiety normally eats at me, is pictures. I'll have a camera. It's my security blanket. And if I'm not doing that, guess what I do? I listen to music. That's where I escape. When I saw people being lost in thought, I realized that I'm lost in thought right now because I'm trying to disconnect from whatever I'm going through and trust my everyday life. What I sit through at work, what I have to listen to, what I have to play, don't play a role in. You do need a disconnection from that. And that is me and my character. So with that being said, at a conversation with my therapist right now.
Nice.
There we go.
did you want to talk about, or you want to go straight?
I would probably want to add that these images were taken between 2010 and 2024. So they were taken on a range of devices, from mainly Fuji, Canon, and even my iPhone, and a film camera. So, I feel like most of the images are luck, but it might be some type of skill, but I think that could just be me, giving myself less credit than what I deserve. Like I said, it's the internal struggle with myself is probably half the battle. We probably can go to questions because
Okay, all right. Question over there.
Gee, I was comparing the students, I thought that was already looked at. Claudia, from the prior, she brings a lot of color. And that's why there's a higher themes about color. And even just meant to use black and white alternate, they're lighting to.
Great question.
Black and white for me, it eliminates all distraction and just lets you focus on the individual that's in the picture. Like when you have color competes with the subject. And ironically, a good majority of these pictures are actually color versions, but I process them in black and white. I personally like black and white more. I find it more timeless. I find like it lasts longer. Like you can't really tell from what image was shot in 2010 to compare it to 2024 because you don't know. But if you have colors, you can see the color palettes because each year colors change. And some of the people in this room actually have been around with me when we walk around and we take these pictures. So, so that's why I chose black and white.
Yes, over here, Brandon.
To kind of engage with that, your subject, I'm really curious because this is a bit of a two-parter. One, you seem to have a lot of reverence for your subjects and a lot of intentionality to giving them their space. As far as I know, this is probably the only photo where you see directly from someone's face. Otherwise, it's often them looking aware and turned it aside. I was wondering what is incorporated into that, why you approach subjects in that manner. And my second half would be like this: is there any artists that inform your work that you're influenced by? Because I feel like you're more structural compared to like a Gary Vinograd of like the past, like historic like street photographers. And it's also like you mentioned, like color would give away time, which like, if you look at like street photography in the 70s and 80s, that advertising and color kind of like changes how you view an image. And so definitely maintaining that black and white, there seems like an interaction there.
So the interaction, mainly, I have social anxiety, so interacting with people actually freaks me out. There are a few pictures where I do actually let the people get in there. However, I felt with the whole disconnected thing, I wanted to show that people are so in their own world that they don't even realize that I'm taking their picture. And it's pretty obvious. I'm not a smallest person. So you see, hey, it's one of those things that, in their world, like the girl sitting on the steps in front of City Hall. Like, I still don't know what was going on with her, but she looked like she was in so much thought on that day. As for photographers that I really like Jay Manziel's work. I follow like a lot of street photographers and stuff like that, but like for me, in essence, when I go out, I'm not looking for anything. I wait for something to present itself because unfortunately, if I go out with the intention to find something, so let's say if I want to find a lady wearing red. If I don't find that lady wearing red, then I feel like I'm a failure. And then it beats me up and I'm like, oh man, I suck. Why did I do this? Blah. And it took me a minute to realize that I have to accept what is given to me. So I just go out and hopefully find in my hour and a half lunch. And most of it is food, but food is pretty disconnected. So
I think we have a question from chat.
We actually have a couple things from the chat. First one is from Lori, where you did kind of touch on this, but she says, do you ever talk to the people you take photos of on the street?
There are a few people I've had conversations with. Normally what happens is that when you walk around with cameras, and I have the luxury of having Fujifilm cameras, so they kind of look retro. So that usually is a gateway. Hey, what type of camera is that? And stuff like that. So there are a few people that I engage with. Most in this, I did not engage with anybody. A lot of it was very early in my life because I was on the train traveling to work. And if you've ever rode the Blue Line, yeah, it's not one of the more safer trains on the metro system. So, you kind of pay attention to everything that's going on. So I have made a plan. I'm going to try to engage with more people, but that's still a work in progress.
And then Kamisha, sorry if I mispronounce anyone's name, but she made a comment that it's giving modern day Gordon Parks. Marcus asked, have you ever considered doing a crossover of the cat fiasco and pro wrestling?
Marcus is gonna get that.
Serious question.
That's my brother. He knows who Fiasco is. He knows that Fiasco does not pose for any picture whatsoever. If I put the camera in Fiasco's face, her head, scratch. As for Kanisha, yeah, Gordon Parks, I really do love his work. Unfortunately, when people ask you, who is your favorite photographer? You're never ready for that answer. So, I mean, he is one of those people that I enjoy.
Sorry.
Let's go ahead and in this room. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment and, I love your work and I love your subject. And I love that it's something that is. And I love knowing that I'm looking at them, but I also wanted to say how much I appreciate the comment you just made about doing it on your lunch break. Because I think sometimes, we, as aspiring artists, we think we have to have all this other stuff in place first. And I really appreciate, that you are carving time out of a day that does not necessarily celebrate you as an artist. During the rest, that you're bringing your artist with you where, and you're it enough to give it life during the work days. I'm just really glad this.
Thank you. I mean, like, a camera for me is unfortunately, I hate to say sometimes it's kind of a crux because even when I go to friends' functions and stuff like that, I always have a camera. It is not that I want to take pictures, it's that I need to take pictures or I will feel uncomfortable, out of place or whatever. It's something that I'm trying to work on more to realize that people accept me for me and actually seeing a lot of my friends here support. It actually is one of those weird, like surreal moments. Like I didn't expect this. So that's like, so me walking around with a camera is just normal. Like right now, I probably couldn't speak if I didn't have hold this right now. So it's a very weird situation for me, but I'm figuring it out as we go.
Over here.
The first book this year.
Okay.
It's the only one I think is modifiably small.
Well, the very first one.
That goes to modify this image to the small.
I'm not modifying that image. What that is an image of a, so that was a sculpture. That was like a monument. And there was a slit in the monument. And so I saw him looking over in Long Beach and I shot him looking over. So that is just the monument right there. So that's how it was framed.
Good question too. And I thought it was also cropped. I looked at it closer, like, no, that's in the shot. It's in the structure in there, right? So framing, really great. There's another question. Yeah, back there, yes.
When you see something, you want to take a photo, but you're afraid to, you know?
Plenty of time. I've probably taken more mental pictures than I've taken actual pictures. Because
Not this one.
Comments, people just said congratulating.
thank you.
All right, good.
All right, I did. Thank you.
Yeah, final presenter. Our final artist today has traveled 789 miles for all today.
You wanna go outside to go party?
So after a very, very, very Please welcome Rachael McArthur presenting I'm Going to Keep Going Until I'm Over It.
Hi, yeah, so I came from New York. My name is Rachael McArthur. I'm originally from Canada, so even longer Uber ride.
Yeah.
But this is my series. I'm gonna keep going until I'm over it. I'll ask if we can just kind of flip through the
Sure.
images as I'm talking
Sure.
so that it just makes sense.
Good. Go ahead.
So this work is an exploration of loss, of abuse, of space and memory. After leaving a toxic relationship of 6 years, I found myself on a loop. I went through the moments and the memories constantly. What do I do with these memories now? How do I change memories? How do they change now that the relationship has ended? What happens to the energy that was left there? And what do these spaces do that they've witnessed all these experiences? Do the spaces hold the memories I had in them, or do they just forget? So I started building. I used rooms and places that we existed together in that had special meanings throughout our relationship, good and bad. I took each of these spaces and focused on a specific event that occurred within them, recreating from my own memory, the feel, the look of the space, the energy I felt in there. I took the people or the characters out of each room to leave the viewer with only glimpses of human activity. Each image shows a story that has happened or the type of relationship that I was having. As you look through the work, you can start to see the stories of who these people are, what occurred, and how the relationship unfolded. The first image I made in this series was actually this image, the balcony. It became the start of how I processed the loss and grief that comes with that. It was an important location towards the end of that relationship and a simple space that held emotions for me. I was inspired to build the balcony after writing a poem about it and just trying to remember how it felt being there, seeing it, and trying to come to terms with me not ever being there anymore. To build each space with what I start with what I remember, in each room or each location, and I build the physical structures first. I add all the small details in after to give the energy of the space. Through the use of photography, these memories become malleable. I create them physically so they no longer just exist in some random space and time within my mind, but they become something that people can actually interact with. Photography is meant to capture memories and moments, so I'm using this idea backwards. I'm creating the memories to be photographed. It gives these moments a special life and allows the experience to become a document of my memory. I give value to them by taking the photograph, and each memory becomes elevated by physically existing. But each miniature is only built for the photograph. So hours of labor goes into building each space, and through the labor, I honor the process of grieving and the events that happened for me. After I'm done photographing each one, they're ripped apart, the physical structure is no longer there, much like the memory that it's trying to preserve. They aren't built to last and only made out of craft materials that aren't archival. I built these sets out of recycled materials found in my studio from bits of plastic, cardboard, wire, paper, found images online, and they become a sort of 3D collage that's then flattened through the photograph. Another aspect of this work is poetry. I am also a poet that performs throughout New York. So this work is part of a book that I'm working on called I'm Going to Keep Going Until I'm Over It. The collection of poems works alongside with the series to give a deeper understanding of how memory and loss are intertwined. It's spoken from grief, abuse, experience, and everything else that I've gone through. So for now, I will stop and then I'll read you guys the poem. Go to the image of the chairs on the balcony. So when I talk about the poetry, sometimes I make the images from the poems, sometimes the poems and from the work. So this was the image that started it all for me, and I have a poem that goes with it. My hands create sculptures. My brain is a camera. My heart is the instructor. My body is a factory pumping out memories of you any chance that it gets. They roll past on a conveyor belt, get sorted into stations. To the left is hate, to the right is love, to the middle, I just can't talk about it yet. But my hands rummage through the rain on a tin roof, again blaring in between slaps, dogs barking, hands down my back, FaceTime dial tones, the sound of tires on back roads, fire in the front yard, sniffing in bathroom stalls, moaning on balconies, I love you whispered gently, tears on the floor, smiles through window. Each one is put in its place. These memories start to form into objects, something that you'll definitely call me crazy for, but my body gets to work and I start to build. I created your balcony once. Looking through the archives of my eyes, I remembered the light, peeking through plastic blinds, falling onto my face, beer bottles reflecting in the glass, indications of the night before, the towel we left on the seat. As a spreader bar chills in the corner, I hide my underwear under your pillow and my hair smells like cigarettes. My hands construct these settings, putting every object into place. My heart instructs me on how it felt waking up there. My brain photographs the moment as my eyes look over the remnants. My body pumps out, sculpting every memory. I turn these things into something physical. I can touch, I can smell, I can remember, I can revisit. But after each one is built, I start to release. I tear down the glass sliding doors, burn the backdrops, rip apart the walls, clean up the beer bottles, because once it's created, there's no use for trash anymore. Thank you.
From the audience here and on the chat.
I am terribly jealous of the dexterity in your hands. Real. So I'm curious about, I love it, by the way. It is amazing, and I love the poetry. Do you, as you're working through this project, do you come up with scenarios, maybe I'm gonna take this, photograph that, and then at some other point and think of something else that you're gonna add, or do you have like this list of this is everything I'll include in this project? I'm just curious what your process.
It's a list of like defining moments of the relationship that I was in. So some are good, some are calm moments, like for example, this of us out on the beach, to ones that are more chaotic when you stop and like start to look at what's actually happening in the scene. You notice the substances, you notice the alcohol, you notice the sex toys in the corner. So how our relationship has changed from like moments of calm to moments of chaos.
So you had that in your mind
As I built
even start.
Yeah, so things that were like defining for me that stuck out, but I had stuck on a loop. And I just needed to process in some way or another. So I built them.
What else? Questions? Yes.
I do have a question. I guess I'm having a hard time formulating the question because I feel very connected to what I sense is your intention, but I also feel connected to a certain amount of pain. And I'm very interested in hearing you speak about navigating a desire to create something and what the process is when the creating, the planning, the shooting, what that does to the pain and how you navigate through it.
Well, it allows me to like release it. I feel like when I'm stuck in a loop of like constantly thinking about like what happened, this happened, that was good, that was bad, that was terrible, I don't want to think about that anymore. It allows me to confront it by literally building it. So as I'm sitting there and building each piece and remembering how it happens, like something gets released in that process and I don't have to think about it anymore. That's another reason why the product is called I'm gonna keep going till I'm over it, because I'm just gonna keep doing it until I'm over it, which is, it's almost done. That's an indication of anything. It's helped. And a side note, I brought one of the little miniatures over there so you guys can get an idea of the scale that I'm working with. For you to look at, just don't look at that.
You got a question over here?
Yeah, this is amazing, very moving and so much work.
Yeah.
Had you, before you did this, had projects where you were physically making an environment
Yeah, I usually,
Beyond, just regular traditional.
yeah, I usually build sets in my studio, like large scale sets. Or my thesis project, I went to RISD a couple years ago, was based in love hotels across the US, so I was like finding sets. So it's either, I'm usually, like, my hands are always involved in my photography. I'm not a documentary photographer. I can't go out in the streets and take pictures. I don't have the patience for it. So this was a bit of a challenge for me, making it really, really small. And I'm really big on lighting as well. So trying to figure out how to light these like really tiny sets all of a sudden was a challenge.
What it reminds me of in my life was the play, doll play and dollhouse,
Yeah,
like how significant all that was too.
that was a huge influence for me, like the idea of dollhouses and like, being a young girl and everyone's marketing dollhouses to you, create this perfect life, create this family, create these things. And like, I thought I had that, but it ended up just being extremely chaotic and not that perfect sense. So that was where I got the inspiration from, was looking at dollhouses. But instead of buying the furniture, I wanted to see if I could build a miniature couch by myself. So
Got a couple of questions from the chat.
So I have two comments. One says the intricate details on the lighting is amazing. And then another says, I love how life-size they are. And then from those same two people, one person asked, how large are these quote unquote scenes? And then the second question is, how do you feel when you look at these snippets of your relationship? And do you feel liberated after expressing them in this medium and photographing the scenes?
so the scene, the biggest one I think is maybe like 16 inches, 20 inches wide. The weird lotus flower building is probably the biggest one. It's a space in Virginia. It's called the Light of Universal Truth Building. And I made it by using it's actually a lamp, the top of a lamp, and then pasted with all the stuff on. So maybe like 20 inches is like the widest. And the second question was,
how do you feel when you look at these snippets of your relationship, and do you feel liberated after expressing them in this medium and photographing the scenes?
I feel good about it after dealing with like what I dealt with for so many years. This is a way that's like proof that it happened, proof that it existed, proof that I survived it. And at this point now, I find them entertaining and a helpful way of just like processing everything that happened.
Have you showcased this to any other platforms or this?
No, this is actually the first time. I had a baby in January. So this is the first time I've shown this work anywhere.
Yes, treat. It's
So-
amazing.
But looking at your partner is inspired me to try to find ways to like thoughts and feelings of relationship. I can express myself through her memory and so that it does the memory don't hold it so that seeing people.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank you. It's a helpful thing.
I want to add therapy, right, Eric?
Yeah.
This is all very therapeutic.
Not expensive though.
Yes, it can be. Well, that concludes all of our artists today. I want to thank all of you here for attending in person, as well as people watching it at home. For those of you here, please don't leave. We got food here and drinks, and please take a look at the work that the artists have brought here today, that you can actually see the tangible form, aside from having to look at it in this digital format. Whoa, that's really but once again, can I get all the artists up here just to take your final bow? One more. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Can I get the artist in front of me here for a quick group shot? Alexi, can we do that?
Yeah. Say right, thank you to everyone for something. Yeah, everybody get.
About me.
Oh. I mean.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Bill. Yeah. I want to be one in there.
I'm right here. I got taking care of something. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait, what's-
For anyone that can hear us, we're sending the Instagram minutes.
Okay.
You pick something.
Now we can, now we're gonna.